Hello. Hi.
Hello. I think there's one person in. Aradhana, hi. This is Sanjukta here. So that I'll quickly say hi while we're waiting. We'll just wait for a few minutes for a few more
Hi,
people.
Sanjukta. Aradhana here.
Hi, Aradhana. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
We'll just give it a few minutes and, if anyone else is joining, and then we'll kick off.
Long time, Aradhana. How are you?
Hi, Armin. I'm good. Yes, very long time. I was back and forth doing India trips for a very long time, actually, just re- regarding things for my parents.
Hmm.
Hopefully, here now for some time.
Good. Good. We'll see you more then. But
Yes,
you can
for
join
sure.
virtually anywhere. No, but I know time
No,
difference and
no, no.
all the other things.
No, I actually can, but when I get there and it's primarily to get stuff done for them, I get quite occupied.
I,
And evening time is more like they're looking forward to spending time with me as well, so more like that.
no worries. We can start now, Sanjukta. You can start
Should we
sharing.
start? Yeah, I think there's two
Yeah.
people.
They will keep joining in. I
Sure.
think people are fashionably late.
Sure.
All the best.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I think there are two people here right now, Aradhana, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce your name correctly. Rukaya, is that right? Hopefully, I've got that right. Um, we were just kind of giving everyone a couple of minutes to join. As we wait, I'll just kind of do a brief introduction for myself. So I'm Sanjukta. I work as a career coach. So essentially I'm based out of London, by the way. So it's afternoon for me. I know it's evening for you guys. But I've lived in Dubai for 10 years before and been in the UK for 7+ years. What I will do is share my screen. Hang on. Let me know if, I'll start that off. Let me know if you all can see my screen, see my presentation, and then we can kick off.
Yes, now we can see the screen, full screen.
Yeah, everyone can see the screen. Right. So, we're going to be talking about mindfulness today, mindfulness and mom guilt. So, just a bit of background, and why I'm doing this today. So, I work as a life and a career coach. I coach mainly women. So, I help women grow in their career, return to work after a break, as well as find balance between work and personal life. And I think one of the main problems that a lot of my clients have faced, when it comes to balance, is mom guilt. So I think when Armin came to me and we just asked me if I could do something on this topic, I jumped on it. So I think we'll kick off, Armin. Maybe I think like you said, people can join in as
Yes.
we go on.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll just take you through the presentation and then we'll have a few minutes at the end if anyone has question and answers. So to start with a brief introduction about myself, like I said, I'm a life and a career coach. I work with women, help them kind of build a career and balance that with their life so that they can, lead a life of no regrets, have that successful career and have that, fulfilling life. And do something for themselves as well as have a happy kind of peaceful family life as well and balance the two. So I started my career in advertising and media 20 years back. which I did for about 10 years. Then I took a break when I had my daughter. When I came back to work, I transitioned, I kind of made a career shift and joined a recruitment company. And we did recruitment for advertising and media related roles. And that's where actually I got introduced to coaching. And that was kind of a natural progression for me. It's something that I've always enjoyed. So I've had experience leading teams, coaching and mentoring colleagues as well as candidates. And during my recruitment days, I helped them find jobs that are aligned with their, what they're passionate about, what their values and strengths are. And then during the pandemic, I kind of took that further, got myself qualified, certified as a coach, and set up my own practice. So I've been doing that for about 3 years now. Well, 2.5 years now. And I've grown up in India, lived in Dubai for 10 years, and been in the UK for the last seven plus years. So and I've worked with global clients, so I understand what it takes to grow in the corporate world, and and I've also kind of over time learned, as well as from my own experience and the experience of my clients, of how we can balance grow as well as keep a balanced work life. So like I was saying, there are three areas that I mainly coach women on. One is career growth and development. Second is helping women kind of return to work after a break, because a lot of women tend to fall off when they take a break, either whether they've had children or other caring needs. And third, and which is going to be the main area of our discussion today, is work-life balance, which, kind of help women build that work-life balance, because we do try and do everything. So we need to build in, tools or strategies that helps us prevent, burnout, getting burnt out, feeling stressed, and, prevent anxiety and overwhelm. And like I said, today's topic, which is one of the main, the key areas, that kind of one of the main things that leads to, or kind of most common problems that I've seen with balance is with moms trying to balance their time for their kids and work, right? And that's when, and we try to push ourselves to do a lot and do everything. And that's when these unwelcome thoughts pop into our heads, which is, and I think we've all experienced that. It's an inevitable part of motherhood. But what's important to understand is, to what degree does it affect us? Because if once we give into it, sometimes what happens is when we're trying to do everything, we get into autopilot mode. We don't have time to think. We don't have time to breathe. And we're trying to do everything. And then when these thoughts pop into our head, we don't have time to kind of rationalize them in our heads. So we believe them to be true, and that's what starts, and then that becomes a habit that, or, it leads to beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we build about ourselves, which then further leads to stress and anxiety and overwhelm, and prevents us from having that healthy work-life balance. Right. So, oops, that's that. Yeah. So just to, to kind of touch a bit upon what are these outcome thoughts, I think this is, we're all familiar with, some of the thoughts that come in, some of the guilt trips that we put ourselves on. Not a good enough mom. It starts all the way, sometimes even pre-birth, like giving birth to our kids, and then comes, the whole time when we are breastfeeding. Some of us can, some of us can't. How long should we breastfeed? Later on as the kids start growing, and when we decide to return back to work, we are always questioning whether we're doing the right thing. Are we giving our child enough time? Can we kind of control everything and manage everything for our kids, as well as get back to work, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with some thoughts here, and maybe you can put it in the chat. If any of these sound familiar to you, or how many of these kind of sound are true for you, where we are kind of riddled with this thoughts of, not being good enough and not doing enough, and, and comparing ourselves sometimes with other moms and what they're doing as well, right? And then if you think about it, what I would like to point out is that what triggers these thoughts, right? What triggers these thoughts? So it's not, like I was saying before, some of this guilt is natural, it's inevitable because we are dealing with a huge responsibility here. We're giving life to little humans, and we need to ensure that we keep them alive and thriving and growing. And, we want to give them the best of everything, because they've grown out of us, like a part of us. So it's obviously, there are some fears that comes with that because we don't want anything bad to happen to them. We don't want to do anything wrong that harms them in the long term. So, of course, that does tend to trigger negative thoughts. And what makes it worse is that we then build in our heads an unrealistic expectations of what we should be doing, or what we um, what we have seen around us sometimes. So whether it is whether we've seen our mothers, our grandmoms, other moms, or whether we have seen what we see in social media, people, other moms posting what they've done with their kids, the places, the time they've spent with their kids. So there are all kinds of things which lead us to kind of build this high expectations of ourselves, or these high standards, or set these high standards for ourselves, which doesn't of course always work. Sometimes it's a particular life situation. So maybe, we've had a second child, or maybe even a change in career, or, a caring need for a parent. There could be various different reasons, which then maybe causes us to maybe spend a little less time with our kid, or not in as much time as we could before. And that sometimes creates guilt. And then finally, which is surprising, is boredom. So a lot of the time when we spend a lot of time with our children, we do everything for our child, it is not uncommon that we feel bored. And then that brings on, because we're craving maybe adult company and adult conversation, instead of, watching the 100th episode of Peppa Pig. Maybe we want to watch something else, which is of more interest to us. So, and that's normal. But then when we feel that maybe we're bored, that brings on guilt. So for me, for example, my daughter was born very premature, and there was a time when I kept questioning myself, is there something that I could have done different? Did I cause this to happen? And I know if you think, in a rational, when you're back to your rational self, that there is nothing that you could have done different, and you're doing everything you can, and you are giving your best. But obviously, when these negative thoughts come, it becomes a vicious cycle, and we're not able to kind of pull ourselves out of that. So which is where it, and that's where, our topic today, which is mindfulness, comes into play. The good news here is that when we do get into this loop of negative thoughts, we can learn how to manage this guilt that we are feeling. We can learn to shift our mindset, from the negative to the positive. So, something as simple as, when all these negative thoughts and all this guilt comes from a space of fear, and where we can move it, and when we want to flip it over, we move it to let it come from a place of love, rather than just fear, where we are not doing enough, or we are have not, or something bad will happen to a child if we don't do something, right? So that's from a space of fear, whereas we need to learn to move it to a place of love, where they do mean everything to us, and we can do something that, I mean, the quality over the quantity, rather than trying to do everything, picking and choosing and deciding what's important for you and your family, and how can we do that so that we should give our child the support and the love that they need. So far, any questions? If there's anything here, or should I move on? Can I move on? Or did this move out of? Okay, I'll move on. So I'm not able to see the chat. I mean, if there's anything in the chat, just make a note. You can put in questions or whatever in the chat, and we can come back to it later.
Sure. Yep, sure.
Okay, so this is, when, like I talked about before, how do we do this mindset shift? This is where mindfulness comes into practice. Now, I know a lot of people have different ideas of mindfulness. For me, before I got into the coaching space and before I got into, learning more about mindfulness, I myself used to be a bit cynical about mindfulness and, meditation, about, it used to mean different things to me, spirituality, religion, which, again, those are very personal thoughts and, feelings that we have. But mindfulness, essentially, if I break it down, and from what I have seen and what I have learned, is that it's essentially just bringing awareness to your thoughts in the present moment. So, when you have these negative thoughts, like I was saying before, a lot of the times, because we are trying to do so much, we're in autopilot mode. So we don't have time to kind of rationalize and assess these thoughts. We just believe them and move on. And that builds, and it becomes a habit to give in to these negative thoughts that pop into our head. What mindfulness does is help us take a breath, pause, and think about these thoughts, or make a note of these thoughts so we can kind of analyze them and assess them and, call them out for what they are and choose how we want to react to them, rather than, you know, just kind of being on autopilot mode and reacting without thinking. Because that's when it leads to, when we react without thinking and we get into autopilot mode and give into these negative thoughts that come into our mind, that's what causes stress, and that's what causes further guilt and shame and frustration, and then, leading to burnout and, overall, low mental health, which is not what we want. And that, of course, affects our, balance. So when we say mindfulness practice, what are the different elements of mindfulness practice? And again, this is very personal, and the different things that we can do. Something as simple as exercise, right, can help your mindfulness, because what it does is it gives you some time for yourself. Yeah, right. It gives you that dopamine boost that you need, because sometimes when you're continuously working, whether it's at work or whether it's at home, even women who are not going out to work and working at home, that's still work. And, taking care of a child is a lot of work and responsibility, like we talked about before. When you're doing anything for a continuous amount of time and not taking time, or taking that time to step away from it, you're obviously going to get into autopilot mode. So what obviously exercise does is help your overall, gives you the time for yourself to step out of the mode you're in, and gives you the dopamine boost, which helps your overall health. It gives you more energy as well to deal with everything that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Journaling and affirmations is another way. This is where you can kind of write down. So, a very typical way of doing it is that when these thoughts come into your mind, just make a note of it. It doesn't have to be in, paper and pen. What I use is just notes on my phone sometimes, right? Just make notes of these negative thoughts that pop into your head, because what you can do is then, that these and then you can also assess what are the triggers that are causing these negative thoughts, and, what can you do to prevent these triggers, going forward. That's one thing. The second thing is that, you just writing it down sometimes just helps you get it out of your system so you don't dwell on it. And then third is, of course, mindful breathing and meditation. Again, this can be, done to suit your needs. There's no right or wrong way of doing any of this. Like motherhood as well, there is no right and wrong way. It's what works for you and what kind of suits your values. So again, with mindful breathing and meditation, I use an app called Inset Timer. If y'all haven't tried it, check it out. There is a meditation, or there's breathing for various different under various different topics, everything from stress to anxiety to mom guilt to focus. So there are various topics under which they have recorded guided meditation. So it's an amazing tool to use if you want to do a short 2-minute meditation, if you want to do a 10-minute meditation, if you want to do 2 minutes breathing, or spend longer time. There is something for everyone's needs, and that's why I like the app, because again, it shows that there is no right and wrong way of doing it. But what it does help, and what meditation and breathing helps with, is just kind of helps us get in touch with ourselves, gives us, to be able to trust our instincts and keep an open mind to so that we can reframe negative thoughts when they pop in. And what does that do? What does reframing mean, right? So when you use the mindful practice to kind of stop the negative thoughts and identify the triggers, what you can, there are various things that we can do. The first step is just be realistic, like be real with ourselves and take a look at these thoughts that pop into our mind and kind of analyze and assess, and rationalize them. Do they actually make sense? And if, what part of that does make sense. So for example, identify when the guilt comes in. Is it when you were late for work one day, or, when you returned late from work one day, or whether it's, that one time that you had to give your child some extra screen time because you needed to do something for work, or whether you weren't able to, cook that that healthy meal for your child. So identify what these triggers are and write them down, because what you can do, and this is what goes back to journaling as well, is when you make note of these thoughts that come in, you can actually look at the positive as well. And for every time that you weren't able to do something, look at all the times that you were able to be there for your child, or were you able to do something, right? And compare the two and see what the balance is, right? Of course, there are times, like I said, there is nothing, none of us can be perfect, right? There are times when we slip up, and there are times when we could have done something different, and that's okay. So it helps us accept that, we can make mistakes, but we can also kind of separate what are mistakes, or what are fine, or what is the negotiable and the non-negotiable for us, right? In everything that we do for our kids and everything that we do for work, when we're trying to balance it, we need to find something like a common ground where we can balance the two out, because we can't obviously do everything at all given times. So it helps us accept that, we can make mistakes, but have that honest conversation if we have made a mistake. Or for example, just as an example, just to give you, is let's say we've given our child extra screen time, let's say for 1 week when we had this major presentation that's come up at work, and we couldn't spend as much time with our child for that week, and we agreed to give our child a little extra screen time. But what we can do then is that the next week we can kind of flip that over, and whereas take a little extra time with our kids, where we're giving them that quality time, and reduce that screen time for your child. And then you can have that conversation. So if, obviously, kids with something like that, they will want that extra screen time, but you can have that honest conversation as to why you need to make that shift, and why some weeks they get more time and some weeks they don't get more times. So it manages their expectations as well, right? So it's all about making it as realistic and breaking it down for yourself, so you can, make it work the way that suits your family the best. That brings in, the next point, which is stop judging yourself. So again, these are thoughts, like once you've written down, when you do that journaling and you do that bit of thinking, taking that time to stop and pause and think about the thoughts that pop into your head, understand that, and it'll help you understand that you are trying to do your best, right? You are giving it your everything, and you're doing the best given your situation. So you can't compare yourself with others. You can't compare yourself with, other working parents, or what you see on social media or in movies, because that's not real. And even if it was, they're all different situations. So we don't know what's happening with anybody else, and what's their support system in the background, or what is their work situation, what is the flexible hours that they have. So it's difficult. It can never be a like to like or an apple to apple comparison, right? So comparing is definitely one of the big things that I have seen amongst clients, and even with myself. It's something that definitely triggers only negativity. It is not nothing good can come out of it. And then the other thing that we realize is that sometimes, let's say, again, each of us is different. So, we operate differently. So if we are trying to control everything and do everything that another mom has done, we'll never be true to ourselves and never be able to actually live up to that expectations because our situation is different. So we cannot sometimes control everything. Even if we did live up to a certain expectation, something is going to change, right? So we cannot control everything and we cannot be present everywhere. So we have to learn, to give ourselves that grace, give ourselves that credit, and assess truthfully, what we can do and what we can't. And that, brings in the next point, whereas, accept support. That, a lot of us, I think, one of the things that come up in early pregnancy, and then, I know it was true for me as well, and I've learned to deal with that, is that when it comes to a child, we want to be able to do everything, and we feel guilt or shame to accept support. I mean, for us, it was, again, like if you, along with your partner, right? So, of course, today, fathers play an equally important role, or fathers or mothers, whatever, they all play, they tend to play an equal role. But for us, we tend to take it on to a different level. That's where the guilt comes in, where we start taking it on to a level where we want to be able to do everything and not ask for support. But the reality is that like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. But I think and that was true back in the day. It's not true anymore. All of us are nuclear families. We, live apart from, separate from our, extended families. And obviously then it's two or three people raising that child as opposed to, having the support of grandparents and uncles and aunts and everyone around us. So, which is why, and then again, more so, both partners are most probably working nowadays. So it's very, very important to have an open discussion and communication with your partner so that you mutually agree what are your values, what are your parenting values, what is priorities, and what is what is the role that each of you are going to play in that, in the bringing up of your child. And again, what are your family values, and what is it that makes sense for you as a family, even if no one else is able to understand or it doesn't work for them, right? So these are the discussions you have to have, so that you can have, so that there are two, responsible adults, for every child. And then, of course, there's a support system that we have to learn to build. For example, in the UK, for example, we don't have the liberty. I mean, very rarely you have help at home, right? And even if you do have help at home, it's someone you should be able to trust and someone who understands your parenting values. And I think that's where a lot of the guilt comes in, whether it's help at home in the form of like a nanny, whether it's grandparents, whether it's uncles, aunts, or even, another friend's mom, school friend's mom. Sometimes we are not able to trust them completely because we feel there's a difference in the values or our beliefs and how we want to bring up our children. And that's where we need to kind of assess who we are able to trust and who we are okay to delegate to, and have that conversation with them. And finally, trust your instincts. It's something that I think we know, when you again, like I said, when you give into your mindfulness practice and take some time to think and take a few minutes to breathe every day, it helps you believe in yourself. It helps you build that confidence in yourself, and build that instincts, trust in yourself, essentially, so that you know what's right for your child and what's not. And finally, listen to your child, because kids are very, very clear about what they want, because they are actually much closer to their instincts than we as adults are. They will tell you if they're not happy about something, and if they're happy about something. So if your child is happy and healthy and doing well and thriving, you're doing good, right? So listen to them, listen to what they're saying, and listen to their needs, and they'll tell you what they need. They may not need all the things that you think they need, and you're trying to live up to that expectations and do everything for them, whereas it might not even be something that's important to them. So yeah, listen to your child. Finally, guilt grace, this is where you have to understand that all of this, what it leads to is, and the biggest thing in all of this is your well-being. Because at the end of the day, if we are not okay, mentally, physically, that we can't do more for our kids. We are not, because our well-being is as important. I mean, is more important than just your child's well-being, because it's only when you are fine can you take care of your child and be there for your child. So and it's also the example that you're setting for our children. I think a lot of the guilt we feel today sometimes does in some way come from what we have seen in the past, and that's the same thing that's going to carry on to our children, or going to be given on to our children, right? So if they see us balancing work and home, if they see us setting an example where we are caring for ourselves as well as for them, when we are looking at the wellness of the entire family as a whole, that's what they learn as well, right? So I mean, they're not expecting, again, our kids are not expecting us to be perfect. That's something that we are expecting of ourselves, or what we think, society expects of us, or what we have seen. But that's not what our kids need or want. All they want is for us to be present and for us to love them. And that's there, that's going to be there in any case. And finally, what this means is all of this is that what we need to do is reframe all the negative thoughts that we've had, that keeps popping up into our head, and transform them into positive affirmations, right? Through the mindfulness practice that we discussed. And then when we look at that, and if we compare the two, we will know. So I've just listed a few affirmations that we could look at. This is something, these are the most common ones, but again, we can reframe this. Each of us can put down here what makes the most sense for us. But if you look at, if you think of all the negative thoughts that pop into our head, we know that ultimately what we need to analyze is, we are doing the best that we can, and that is good enough, right? We need to tell ourselves that we are taking care of ourselves, and we need to feel good to show up in our best form for our kids. Because if we don't feel good, we can never be good enough for our kids, if I may. So and then again, the things that we talked about before, where we are allowed to make mistakes, but we can learn from them, right? So if we have made a mistake, we can learn from them. It's not the end all and be all of everything. We can trust. So again, we can learn to trust our instincts. So if we have given a choice between, what we need to do for our child, we need to trust our instincts. Need to tell ourselves that we are grateful for our kids, and what we need to do is be there for them, no matter what, and set that positive example so that they can thrive going forward, right? We need to tell ourselves that if we let go of our mom guilt, that's only going to free up space for mom positivity and energy that we can then put back into time that we spent, or the quality time that we spend with our kids. And then, of course, like we've already talked about, let go of unrealistic expectations, and do not compare ourselves to other moms. And all of this, what it leads to finally is that, when we take these steps or help ourselves from overcoming this guilt, it will help us lead, a greater balance, find more balance in our work life. Because at the end of the day, unless we have this balance, right? Unless I free our mind space from this constant negativity, the constant guilt that we feel, if we try to do everything, we're not going to be able to do either thing properly. So we're either, if you're trying to be with our kids when we're at work, we're not going to be able to focus on work properly. And if you're thinking, and at work, if you're thinking about our kids, sorry, the other way around. At home, if you're constantly thinking of work, we're not able to give our kids the 100% of quality time that we want to spend with them. So, and which is why, it goes back to saying, and, in the words of that we say here as well, that, we can't, unless we find that balance between, the time that we have at work and the time where we have the children, we cannot be successful in what we're doing, and we cannot grow, and we cannot be better versions of ourselves, for ourselves as well as for our kids, right? So And so, yeah, and then finally, just to end, there is no perfect way. In in words of Jill Churchill, there's no perfect way to be a mother, but a million ways to be a good one. So we need to just find what works for us and what the way that we can do our best and give our kids the best, because it's something that will help our overall success, not just for ourselves again, but for our kids as well. So yeah, I'd like to end here.
Thank you. Hi, intently listening.
I'm gonna try and see.
I've got a few. I've taken my
Okay,
notes.
sure.
But anybody has any questions or just wants to share something? I think what was my first very, very focused, or I would say,
Mm-hmm.
very, very aha moment that I realized in this session
Yeah,
was the slides. And we discussed that earlier today as well, right? That
yeah,
self-talk that we do.
yes.
I also actually took a little quiz, or just looked at that list and said, how many times am I saying that to myself, or those things collectively as well?
Yeah, yeah.
And it comes high up. It still comes. There were about 15 statements, 10 statements, I think.
Yeah, I think about 12 or 13. Yeah. I'll go
I,
back to that slide actually.
I think I would have said at least 3 to 4 on a daily basis to myself.
Mm.
It takes practice more than anything. Me being a mom, I think all of us here are moms, from the group that I see.
Mm.
And some of us have more than one child, and
Yeah.
it doesn't get any easier, or it doesn't get, I mean, it does get tougher, I would say.
Yeah.
For me, mindfulness has come with conscious practice, or is an evolving process.
Mm.
And I love the fact that you've actually turned these around towards the end and said this can actually be a positive self-talk. So that is really, really something that I will take away from this session.
Okay.
Another thing, Sanjukta, you've given a lot of information, and it was amazing that you had actually 45 minutes to cover it, and you did. So my question would be, what was that moment for you when you started realizing that this is something that you actually want to impart as knowledge, as a support system, and as a business venture for yourself? What was that moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, first of all, and thanks for your points before. And that was like something we discussed, flipping the negative to the positive. I think that's definitely something that, even I've learned over time, and I do apply. I think what kind of changed for me, like I was telling, I mean, I was sharing before, and Arvind, I know you know this, is that my daughter was born very premature. So my guilt started, I started guilt tripping myself like right from the start, because I was, the thought that even without wanting it to come into my head, that kept popping up, is there something that I've done or I could have done differently to prevent this from happening, right? And obviously, it was like she was in the NICU for 3 months. I mean, touch wood, she's fine. She's 13, or going to be 13 in a few months now. And we have I mean, I have a different set of guilt that happens around that. But that's something normal. So I think what I realized, or what made me realize, is that two things. One is that, what is the example that I'm setting for my child going forward? Because sometimes and I saw that, the time when I spent initially the first few months, it was, I was with her, not first few months, I think almost for the first year, I was with there because she was premature. She needed that extra bit of care initially, to get her to a level where, her immunity was stronger and better and stuff like that. And it was that first year where I felt every time I had left her with someone, and it was either a grandparent or, someone I could trust, even if it was my husband and I going out, it was always, is something going to happen to her? Like, that was the first. And I realized that I mean, it's not healthy. I cannot think like this, because it kind of took over different aspects of my life. Even when I thought of getting back to work, my constant fear was, can I leave her and go? But the truth of the matter is, kids need their space too. It's not just you. I realized that my child is only it's only going to be better for her if
Mm,
she has room to grow and I'm not constantly on her all the time. And it's
mm,
the same for me. Like we need that space because we can't kind of, nurture her. I can't nurture her and I can't give her something that, kids her age can, right? And that's normal. At the same time, as she grows and now she's almost a teen, she has again her own life and it's only going to get, as she grows, she is going to need and want that own life. But at
right.
the same time, I can't lose myself and my life in just, nurturing her, right? So while that's a very, very important part of my life, I think I'm better for it and she's better for it if I am able to take that time, right? Where I do things for myself and I have something and I build a career for myself because it's healthy. I'm in a better mind space, right? I'm more positive. I'm much more, and I'm able to spend that quality time with her, which is what she needs, and I think that was the main thing that tipped the scales for me. Like I realized is that she needs her space too, as much as I need my space. And I'm only going to help both of us in this equation, if we take, and I think, I mean, initially, my husband did play a big role in that as well for me to realize that, I need to have my own kind of something that I can call of my own, and which is not everything has to be linked with her, even if obviously she's probably the most important thing. But yeah, I think that's what.
I believe even this is in some way linked to her, this epiphany of the thing
True.
that beautiful. It's not something that has not happened deliberately. It's probably subconsciously it has evolved into that, and that's why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah.
These formative years of where things will go for you from this point on, and I'm really, really excited to see how things turn about. But tell me something. I
Mm,
want to ask to all my members, and I think in my experience, one two factors matter a lot for us mums and us women.
mm,
Internal battle that we are trying to sort, especially in these kind of scenarios and in these with these sessions and more awareness on mental well-being,
mhm.
mindfulness. But apart from that, that's the personal negative self-talk, which we are efficiently proficient on. Like we can do that, time and again. But
Yeah.
what is the way you can tackle the external factors of negative talk, of
Mm,
not having the right motivation,
mm,
support,
mm,
and just the push, the positive reaffirmations that you'd look from that you're not getting yourself, but from
mm,
outside. How
mm.
do you compensate for that and still move forward?
So if I've understood correctly, are you asking me if you're not getting that support or that affirmation from outside, how do you still kind of, in spite of that, kind of move forward, right? And I think that, I mean, it's a very good question. I think that comes back to the mindfulness practice, right? It's about, and I think dipping into your
Mm,
own thoughts and being, kind of spending those few minutes to breathe and to think and dig within rather
mm,
than, and I think it's, while external, even if you do have that external support, sometimes, you have very good support and they tell you all the right things, but you still don't believe it,
mm,
right?
absolutely.
So
Yes.
it's even if you have that support or you don't, unless it comes from within,
Mm,
um, and and this all comes from certain beliefs. So when you give in to these negative thoughts, right, and you keep believing it more and more, they become like core beliefs in your system. They become limiting beliefs. So you start thinking that, okay, this is true. This is reality. I am not a good mom. You start believing that. And then no matter what anyone tells you,
right.
somewhere in the back of your head, you're going to have this nagging feeling that I'm not doing enough. I'm not good, right? So
Mm,
that's where, again, the mindfulness practice comes in, where you need to take that time, break
mm,
down those thoughts for yourself, take those few minutes. And it's difficult to do, I agree, because sometimes there's so much to do, we don't have the time. And we're like I was saying, we're in autopilot mode. So we
mm,
don't take that time to think. But it doesn't have to take too long. Even if we can devote 5 to 10 minutes every day, that is enough. Just put down these thoughts and kind of dig in and think for yourself. Another trick, sorry, just another thing that I do, and I've helped a lot of my clients do, is flip, like we were talking about flipping it, is think of someone else in your situation. So it could be, your sister, a very close friend, even your child. Let's say, 20, 30 years down the line, they have a child. What would you want them to think? If these were the thoughts that come into their head, would you want them to believe this? And what would you say to them? Or
Mm,
what is the support that you could give them? Think of
right.
that and apply that to yourself.
Mm,
You know?
that's interesting. I'm trying to take that. Okay. It will take some time to practice, but
It
yeah,
takes some time. It takes some time. It's not, I mean, all of this, it takes consistency because it's not going to happen overnight, right? You need to keep practicing. So, how you give into these thoughts and start believing them, that
right.
comes with, similarly, you need to give in to the affirmations and start believing them, keep tell, and which is why affirmations is all about, doing it every day. So, you keep making yourself believe that that's true, and then you do believe it, then it is reality, right? Like that becomes your reality then.
Yeah, true. True. Any questions, anyone, or anything you
Or
want to
any
share?
experiences, yeah, of anyone else if they have, or any kind of their tricks or tips that they use.
One of the things that I've been talking about a lot. I mean, I can talk for days, so much
Yeah,
negative
but
stuff myself. Sure,
yeah.
we all.
Hi. Hi,
Yeah.
Sanjukta, right?
Yes.
Sorry. By the way, you got my name right, so it's fine. Sukaya.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
yeah, so I was just listening to the whole thing, and I agree 100%. Um, being a mom of four, I have like from teenager to infant,
Oh,
and being an entrepreneur for like so many years, and then sudden changes in life,
yeah.
it really overwhelms you.
Mm-hmm.
You get really frustrated with the changes you actually go through, things that you have to sacrifice, things that you have to put at slower pace,
Mm-hmm.
and then as you said, the what do you say, the things that you can't really the stuff that is not in under in your control, like
Yeah.
the changes in your body, to your mind, to everything,
Exactly.
um so all of that, I really agree, because it has been the same for me as well. And moving to Dubai was also another
Mm.
change in life. So it took me it took me actually a year or a year and a half, I would say, for me to really understand the value of slowing down. And it's, I know, like, understanding that it's okay to slow down a little bit. It's okay to take take breaks from things that you have been doing,
Mm-hmm.
because in the end, like, it's going to be worth it, like, right? Because like you said, your kids also need you, and you need yourself as well,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, yeah, so basically what I want to say is, like, that it's okay, like you said, that affirmation, I think you need to give it to yourself
Yeah.
more than actually expecting it from outside. And getting it from outside is like a 0.01%, I would say,
Yeah.
like, so yeah. And I think we women are like doing a great job. I think we're fighters, and yeah. So just wanted to add to that, and I agree 100% with everything that you said. And yeah, I think we can keep going. It's a good thing. Yeah.
I think there's merit to also the feeling of community and the element of community, especially
Absolutely.
like it surveys.
Yeah.
Each of us can
Right now, mindfulness is on my table, right? She's exploring with everything that I have set up. I just set up my, like, studio just yesterday, and right now it's like turning upside down.
Oh,
No, thank you for that, Rika. I think, I mean, what you've said is very, very true. I think, like you said, I think one of the things that you said, and I'd just like to touch upon is, the act of slowing down. I think we feel that we're going to lose out if we slow down. But honestly, I feel will only gain, and I've seen this with clients over and over again, because we are not in a race. We are not in a race. I mean, sometimes we think we're in a race with other people, but we don't need to be. Because if you know what you want out of your career, out of your life, you will get there. And sometimes slowing down will help you go faster, or go longer, rather than someone who's, going full force, because somewhere you're going to burn out, and somewhere you're going to realize that you're not able to make it to the end.
It
So
actually helps you understand yourself and your skills, and you can actually come up with fresh ideas and things like that. It really helps.
exactly. No, totally. I fully agree
I
with
one
that.
of we do a lot is try to mentally compare, which you also pointed out on. You pointed out on so many things that was amazing. So you pointed out on comparing ourselves and then trying to compare it to a yardstick that we haven't set for ourselves. So I think we should be trying to set more definitive yardsticks or goals or visions for our own journey, because we know our capacity, we know our maximum, we know our minimum, and we know the pace that we'll want to take, if everything is fine. If it's not, obviously that's another alternative altogether. But as long as we are in the same status quo, there will be a certain trajectory that we want to map out. Deviating from that trajectory just because of external nuances, external factors, or external competitive information that we get, at least in our journey as people and as entrepreneurs, with having lives of mothers and having 4 dependents, 2 dependents, 3 dependents. I still have 4 dependents, including the 6 and the nannies as well sometimes. So
Yeah.
it happens. But we have to balance, right? So you won't be able to balance if you're trying to live somebody else's life and trying to live somebody else's goals, because they have different realities, and a reality will not change only by mapping against or mapping or mirroring others' goals.
Absolutely. And also, like, even if you think that someone else has exactly the same situation as you, it's not true, because their experiences and their belief system itself is different. I mean, that's the starting point. If that is different, even if everything else looks the same from outside, it's not. So kind of there's no point in comparing and setting yourself up based on someone else's goals or someone else's yardsticks, like you said.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this, Sanjukta. I think
So glad I could share this. Because like you said, I think community is everything. I think one of the biggest things, and I like doing this, is that, to let other moms know that this is, it's natural for us to feel guilt. I think, and I think that's the thought I'd like to leave everyone with, is that it's natural to feel guilt. I think when and some amount of guilt is even healthy, because I feel like it sometimes keeps you on the right track and helps you deciding what's right and wrong. But it's when it crosses a certain level that it stops you from thinking rationally and doing what needs to be done, you're not taking that time. That's when it becomes a problem. And that's when it starts affecting, balance, because then you're trying to do everything, at work and home and everywhere, for parents, for kids, with friends, whatever. And then you realize that you're kind of, leading yourself to burnout for sure. So, yeah.
When I got pregnant with my firstborn, Ayan, I was in media still, and my was my partner, Noreen. She used to be the head of marketing, director marketing at Johnson and Johnson, and I was managing a brand. One day we were at this agency meetup and all. I still remember that dialogue or that statement very, very categorically, because that has changed my life. While I was pregnant, I had not even told anybody, and I took Noreen aside for some reason, and we were talking about something else, and I was like, Noreen, you have grown-up kids now, almost grown-up kids.
Yeah.
How do you manage that guilt element? And I don't know where that question came from, right? Don't you feel guilty about having a thriving career and so on and so forth? So she's like, do you know what, Armin? I have battled this so many times around in my life, but someone really wise told me this. And this is a fact, because we're in the medical field, because I've a little bit of science. I know for a fact that until the age of 5, kids, when they grow up, they will not have memory. So they will never ever hold you responsible, or they'll not actually feel that void. So until they are 5, they don't really need you. It's all autopilot.
Yeah.
Poop,
Food, Yeah, sleep, exactly.
So this is what you know, really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I actually saw that happening through my life.
Mm.
And now that my daughter is 6 years old and my son is 9, I want to be more present around them because these are their years to kind
The
of be.
formative years, yeah.
Initially, when
Yeah.
I started survey, it was the most challenging for me to battle that because
Yeah.
I was taking my daughter, breastfeeding her behind pop-ups that we were doing then, you know, markets that we were doing
Yeah.
them, the pop-up tent, like, you know, in those camping tents, and
Yeah.
breastfeeding her and feeling, oh my God, what am I doing? Shouldn't she be in a
Yeah.
cozy room and, you know,
Yeah.
whatever else? But she doesn't have
No,
any of it.
no,
I didn't tell her of it.
exactly. And
But
no, and I think what she will remember, however, is that you were there for her. The
yes,
love is what she will feel,
yeah,
right? It
and
doesn't matter where and how and that.
exactly. So now she talks about the fact that, oh, mom has a business,
Yeah.
mom runs it her way. This
Yeah.
afternoon, when we were talking, she was
Yeah.
like, oh, she's your boss. You have another boss. In her memory, there is no boss. Mama is just doing what she's doing. So it was very pleasant. It is very pleasant and it is a reality. So
Yeah.
Rukmita, you can take that and apply that to your life also right now. Your little one can compensate for the rest of them and say, you know what, I
Yeah.
still have 5 years, 4 years more to go. But
Exactly.
on that note, I'd really love to thank you all for staying on and listening and being present, being part of this. Um, yeah. Have a good evening, ladies.
Yeah,
Food for
thank you so much, everyone.
and
Thank you, Armin.
please share the presentation so we can share it across
I
to
will.
everyone.
Yes, so if anyone wants to download it, I will share share a PDF version so you can upload it into the.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.